Hey guys on Facebook, welcome to Talent Talk. My name is Chingaze. I'm clearly in my office. If I seem to slur my words and whatnot, it's because I've been having NyQuil since noon. Anyway, you're gonna have to bear with me, but it's gonna be worthwhile because today we are speaking to a gentleman named Garfield Wilson, who is a fabulous actor, and he's been in a ton of shows that you've seen and a few shows I've seen. So help me welcome silently from your own homes or wherever you're watching this. I couldn't care less. Help me welcome Mr. Garfield Wilson. Hey, there he is.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, man?
I'm doing very well. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day in Vancouver. And yeah, man, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for taking the time. And that actually takes care of my first three questions, which was, where are you? Where do we find you? And what's the weather like? So you're so ahead of the game. I can't even tell you.
I'm just so smooth into this whole thing.
I see behind you there's a guitar and something I don't know. It looks fuzzy to me. It could just be my eyesight.
So I've got a guitar that I've been plucking away on because I've been singing since the tender age of 5, and then above me is a family pic of my kids and I. And it's hard to see it's a black and white picture. It's way better live, but I've got pictures of my kids and all over the house. My living room is my favorite room because it's got the most pictures of my kids around.
That is awesome. Now I think through the world of the internet, I might have just been invited into your home. We'll leave that. Let's see. In 30 minutes, I'll ask you again.
It happened so fast without you even realizing it.
That was a legally binding invitation. Anyway, so the music at 5, singing at 5.
Yeah,
when the acting? When did the acting bug kind of get you?
Well, the acting bug. I've always been a movie buff, but the acting bug really hit me about a year out of college. I was in this cover band, funk, soul, R&B cover band, and we were very, very popular. My goal was to be a recording artist, and the stage manager saw our show and asked me to audition for Jesus Christ Superstar in the role of Judas. And it was very much out of my comfort zone. I mean, I was in the choir in high school and in junior high, and I auditioned for this role. And I landed the role, and it just sort of changed the game for me as far as what performance could be in that genre. And I dabbled in it up until I did Hair, the musical Hair, the year after that. Then I moved to Vancouver, and one thing led to another, and then I started to delve into the acting world.
Very nice. Now, where were those first two things, if not in Vancouver, where you are now? Where
was in Alberta.
Oh, okay, sweet.
Yeah, the Mayfield Dinner Theater. They put on a bunch of different shows, and they put on this enormous production of Jesus Christ Superstar with Alfie Zappacosta playing the role of Jesus.
Okay, now I haven't heard that name in a while.
Right?
I don't want to reverse math when you got out of university.
Well, let's just say I had a full head of hair at that time.
Okay. Well, you're making this work, except for when the lights hit it just right. Again, no. You know what? This is why I get most of my work right here, man. This is it. Just a big head of hair. I always wanted to see what I look like.
Beautiful head of hair, my friend. You do have a beautiful head of hair.
This is why we get into the entertainment world, kids, is so people will fish. Just do a little fishing. Just put it out there. Boom, compliments. Fish, compliments.
So fast.
Yeah. Speaking of compliments, I'm all tied up in my wire here. Can you see this? I should have paid a little extra for the green one, and then we could adjust.
I can see that clearly. I can see it clearly.
You can see that clearly. All right. Well, just pretend. Use your acting skills and pretend I'm not tethered to my computer here. Did I say thank you so much for coming on this show?
Oh, no, you didn't, but you're very welcome. I'm really happy to be here. This is a real treat, honestly speaking. Yeah.
Well, look, before we begin, I'm not sure if I don't want to call this an actual real show because what I'm using is a webcam. Okay. And I'm sitting in front of my computer in my office next to some of my favorite toys. Anyway, Where in Calgary, by the way? And
Okay.
I don't know if you noticed the shirt back there. Do you see the shirt back there?
Yeah, I see a picture of a dude with shades. I see action figures, and I see a blue shirt.
Okay, well, we'll talk about the action figures later. That blue shirt, by the way, as you see it, is Jason Jones wore that in the show out here for 3 years. Well, he didn't wear that thing for 3 years. Probably wore it for 2 days. It's how did I just forget the name? It's the Detours, which
Detours. Yeah.
Were you out here for a little while doing that?
I was out there for about a week doing that show, a couple of episodes, and that was such a great time. I mean, such a really wicked cast. It was a smart, funny show, really crazy things happening to that family, and just a really, really cool cast. Really cool cast. I had a great time. They put me up in this wonderful hotel downtown Calgary. I can't remember the name of it. I think they put all the actors up there in that hotel, because right down below in this gravel sort of like cobblestone sidewalk is, I think, the Cactus Club. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
And that's where I had dinner most nights. But I was really happy with that role. I played an FBI agent named Agent Lloyd, and this wonderful actress who did impersonations of Melania Trump, and she's on Broadway. She's a beautiful singer, Laura. Last name starts with a B. I'm going to kill myself because I can't remember her name.
Look, Laura B appreciates your shout out, and wherever she is, God bless her. Now I want to talk about that hotel some more. This is what I want to concentrate on. The acting thing is not going for me, and I want to get into the hotel arts. Okay. I want to get into middle management and whatever else people do in hotels. Actually, no, let's skip that. Sorry. So
go with that. I'm like, where's he going with the hotel thing?
Nowhere, man. Nowhere.
Oh,
nowhere. Sheesh. Okay, so how about education and stuff? At some point, I wanted to ask you, what the young kids out there should be, who they should be kind of like reading, who they should be looking up on YouTube. Is there? And the reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm getting here is because when I watched some of your reels, and by the way, you have too many reels. All right, I saw an 8-minute one, a 7-minute one. I saw a sizzle reel, which we're gonna have to show the sizzle reel because your accents in it were great.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not talking about your stand. Don't interrupt me. And I'm not talking about your standing. I can't be fired from this. All the producer can do is unpaid, and I still get to sit in this office surrounded by my toys and that stupid shirt. Now, I'm not talking about the Jamaican accent because it's just like, oh, it's Jamaican. His parents or family can't, whatever. You know what I mean? I can do an East Indian accent. My parents some of them were East Indian, the ones I met. But some of the tone in the voice, the tone from different character, I was like, this guy studied. So yeah, maybe let's talk about that. Either education, or is there someone that, is there a couple books the kids can read and have a shiny head like yours?
Because I grew up, and here's the honest truth. Because I grew up being a huge fan of music, and I credit my dad, he could never walk into a record store and come out empty-handed. And he wasn't just a fan of, music that I predominantly grew up with, which was Motown, soul, and reggae music. But he was a fan of just good music. So we had like Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Bruce Springsteen, Foreigner, anything that was good, Boy George, the Culture Club, anything that was good music at the time that my dad was like, that's a good song, came into our house. And so I listened to this stuff. And I remember being very young and my dad driving us to like family get-togethers and house parties. And he had an 8-track in his car, his Ford car. And he would play these mixed sort of tapes on his 8-track, which was like, the Drifters, the Four Tops. Hey, I lost you for a second. I can't see you anymore. Did something happen?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
You're just too important right now, and we're focusing on you.
The Four Tops, Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Jackson 5, all of these amazing artists that I grew up with. I tried to mimic them as a child when I sang their songs and memorized the tone of their voices. And then from there, one of my biggest influences outside of music was Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. And me and my buddies would watch their stand-up comedy specials ad nauseum. Even Robin Williams had a couple of where he wore this, he did the stand-up comedy special where he wore sort of like a Hawaiian shirt, sweating buckets. And just the voices that they would use to create these colorful characters when they're telling these amazingly funny stories. And I just really locked onto that. And I remember being at house parties, and my dad was a wonderful storyteller. And when he told stories, they were just, everybody was engaged, and he would just tell stories, and he would use voices to mimic the teachers that he had, or his parents, or his buddies, or his friends, or anything like that. And so when I would land these roles, and I would try to authentically land myself in the conversation and bring life to these characters and bring their words off the page and make it true for myself, I would subconsciously just give them a voice, wherever they were, whatever time period that was, and whatever was going on, I had an idea of who this person was. And then I would fuse a bit of my personality in there, and this voice would come out. And sometimes it was on purpose, but other times it was just really organic. When I looked at, you spoke about my sizzle reel. When I look at my sizzle reel, there's a lot of different, like you said, there's a lot of different tones. And I remember somebody that's close to me was watching the Astronaut series, where I was playing Niles Taylor, one of the leads in that series, a father. They're like, did they do any kind of special effects on your voice? Because it doesn't sound like your speaking voice. I'm like, no, that's just the voice that I was using for that character. And I appreciate the compliment. I take it as a compliment. And
I meant it as a dig. That you can't find your own voice and just stick to it.
I really, honestly speaking, I'm a huge fan of the arts in that way, where people will just take you to another world where you feel like you're a fly on the wall. Eddie Murphy would do that with his stand-up. When you watch him voice the donkey or other characters, when he did the Nutty Professor, just unbelievable. Coming to America, all those different characters that he played, they just had different nuances to their voices where they were just completely different people. And I don't necessarily consciously say that I'm going to use this voice for this character, but if I have an accent, or when I think about the Bletchley Circle, where I played a war veteran who was in San Francisco that was immigrated to that part of the town and lost their son. Of that time, I just had this feeling of who this person was, and that's the voice that I gave them. Hope that answers the question.
I don't remember my question, but in what you gave me was a melange of stuff. And I'm like, I want to reference about 8 of the things you said, sitting around and listening to your father, or maybe more family, maybe there's uncles and stuff too, who tell stories, is amazing. By the way, the Robin Williams thing where he's wearing is probably San Francisco. I think it was like Live in San Francisco, where he was just he just done cocaine, and he just went out and he just gave his heart to us. And for any kids out there who want to do stand-up and whatnot, you can watch all those things, but maybe try and remember the years that they were done, because I grew up with Raw and Delirious, and it was the shit. I'm not even sure if I can swear. My producer will just cut that right out. But if you were to try and listen to some of that today, you'd be like, no, come on, man. Come on, Eddie, you can't say that.
It's a different time. It's funny because, growing up in the 80s and 90s, and, for me, really coming of age in that time and watching movies and going back and looking at those movies that I absolutely loved and were really impactful for me as a young kid, they don't age well as far as like being inclusive and
Right.
and being cognizant of gender and equality and all those different things. I mean, the conversations are just so much different today in the last 5 years or 10 years, 6 years, I would say, which is great, which is really great because it means that Hollywood is changing and that the world is changing and that the conversation is not the conversations that are happening are more cognizant of the fact that we need to be kind to one another and be cognizant of like everybody's experience and one of the things that growing up being one of the only Black kids in class always, and being in high school a handful of Black kids in class and being the brunt of so many different jokes and so many different things from your classmates to your peers to teachers and all the like, is that I have a trigger for people that go out of their way to make people feel bad about themselves to make a joke. You know what I mean? So that things are going to be funny or things are going to be endearing or things are going to be cool at the expense of somebody else because of their color or their because they're the LGBTQ or because of their gender. You know what I mean? And because of that, I'm really aware of it. And so I really love the fact that things are evolving so that people are checked on that and that people are held accountable to that and that the conversation is different now than it was when I was a kid. It's better for my kids, that's for sure.
Well, that's great to hear, man, because I think we were moving in the right direction for a number of years. Coming to Calgary in 1980, I was the only spot of color in my school.
I believe
I had like the two Asian kids, they were brother and sister, and they hung out by themselves, and that's great. Yeah. But otherwise, this is not what the show is about. The show isn't about your experiences. It's about your experiences. So I don't want to get too political, but the funny thing is, I think as a society, if we move towards those voices and we allow those people, slightly marginalized in whatever way, to have a tiny little bit of a voice, and we are talking about a tiny little bit of a voice. We're not talking, you know what I mean? Now we suddenly take these giant swings. But there are a group of people who believe that it's taking something away from them. Like, oh, well, this person has a voice. It takes away from me. I'm like, but no. And, I had this one example of something where, and I won't do the example, but because something was from the past had gone away and they changed it and they went, hey, this wasn't cool. We changed it. Great. We're moving on. And it was some other group that has nothing to do with me. It made me and my day feel a little bit better that I was living in a society that could acknowledge that old thing and be like, okay, let's move on. So it actually helps everyone. Do you know what I mean? And this is so not about movies, but oh goodness. I did want to talk.
It's good, man. It's good. I mean, it's all part of that. I mean, when you talk about that, it's not about movies, but it's representative of that because the film and television industry is just starting to come into a place where they are starting to represent the world that we live in. And the world that we live in is beautifully diverse. And for a very long time, Hollywood didn't represent that world. It was very much this. And now it's encompassing all of this, which is the world. And, I've said this in other conversations that I've had, is that life happens to individuals that just happen to be Black, that just happen to be part of the LGBTQ community, that just happen to be Asian or Indonesian or Indian or First Nations or whatever they are. Life happens to them and real things that happen to them. So stories can be told in compelling ways that are very entertaining and very, very engaging with people that just happen to be part of these communities because that is the world that we live in. So, I'm really encouraged by artists that are becoming really powerful players in this industry, like Regina King, who is directing and producing and telling stories that are super compelling, and like, you know, that is very, very heartwarming and energizing for someone like myself.
Very cool. I definitely had a question / comment in there, but then I lost it because I just stared into your eyes. Anyway.
That's a danger. When you're talking, that's a danger. You got to be careful.
True enough. Oh, you know what? There was a question that I had written in a book in words. I write my things in words sometimes. And it was kind of like, is there a role or a type of film or a type of character that you would not consider doing where you are now? Now, as a successful actor, you've done it. You've worked up the chain. And is there something you just like? No, I'm busy that week. Is there anything like that? You turn some stuff down? I did turn
down a role where it recently, like last year, late in the summer, where casting had asked me to come in for a movie that was for Netflix, where I played a chauffeur. I just wasn't, like a chauffeur driving.
It was Driving Miss Daisy Part 2, The Return.
Yeah,
I know. I was up for it.
No, I'll pass on that. And where I am in my career, I've worked really hard, and I've been very fortunate to play roles that are very, very different and very diverse and in a lot of different diverse projects. So now I'm looking for complex characters to play that are not just two-dimensional. So when you talk about roles that I wouldn't necessarily play, I've had those conversations with my agent, so I just don't see those roles anymore. You know what I mean? I'm not auditioning for gangbanger number 2 or paramedic number 1. You know what I mean? I'm just not auditioning for those roles anymore. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, because that's how it came up in the industry. But I've gotten to a point where I've paid my dues, and I'm ready for something that's challenging, that's outside of my comfort zone, and bring it on.
Sweet. Well, you heard it here. Were those words? I don't even know what I said. I think I was going to say you heard it here first, but then I just stumbled over my words. I love that, though. You start off, and not you. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to do that thing interviews do when they talk about themselves while staring directly at you. So I love that you start off and you're cop. You're cop. It's cop, and then it might be police officer number 3 or something. You got 2 lines or something, and then it's like Mitch. You're Mitch, because this face is Mitch, and then you're like, whatever it is, Jimmy Jesterton. You got a last name, and you're like,
you get a last.
I've got a last name. I'm going to be in 3 scenes at the very least. But no, I love that complex characters. That's interesting. Hey, one day I'll play a complex character. Why the hell am I talking about myself? Isn't this about you?
It's cool that you are, because as an actor, I'm not immune to that insecurity. I mean, I've done a lot of research, and I've gone on YouTube and keyed in the actors circle, or the actors workshop, or in the round, and listen to these actors talk about their journey and talk about being very, very authentic and transparent with their insecurities in regards to that feeling that they have, where they feel like they land a massive role, and as they land it, they are like, oh my God, I hope people don't find out that I might not be right for this role, or this is more than I can handle. That fraudulent kind of space that we can occupy, and I think that fear is a good thing, and I think that never kind of leaves you in some respects, because the way that this industry is, I mean, you just go gig to gig to gig, unless you've locked into a series like Grey's Anatomy that's got renewed for an 18th season. I mean, like, that's just so rare, So, but as far as delving into complex characters, I mean, there are characters that on the page, in the breakdown, can appear to be quite two-dimensional, but you can actually give it your own juice. You can actually give that character a backstory or pre-existing circumstance and bring something else to the audition and to the reading, or to what I like to coin the conversation. So I never actually think of myself as having an audition anymore, doing a self-tape in that regard. Think of it as just really delving into what the script is and reading everything that's in the breakdown and trying to really land myself into what this conversation is, and then participating in that conversation, giving it everything that. And in that sense, I've been very fortunate and successful in landing roles with that philosophy, because it never becomes about trying to land a role. It's always about acting and really honing into the craft and the joy of having that conversation. And if you can actually have that joy, then you lose that space that one can occupy, which is that desperation of like being in an audition and really trying to land the role and really be attached to the words that are on the page. Like, you know, doing a read and doing a scene and getting distracted because you didn't say a word that was on the script, right? I've landed roles where I totally messed up a certain part of the scene, but I knew exactly what I wanted to say, and I was invested in the conversation, and that was it. So for the last 3 years, which was a paradigm shift for me, is that I would go into an audition and I would, you know, and before this paradigm shift, I would leave an audition and think about how I did the audition, think about what it was like in the room. Did they like me? Did they not like me? Did I land that turn of that emotional scene that I wanted to do? And once I had that paradigm shift, I just wanted to come in and have a really great conversation. You know what I'm saying? And so I would leave the audition and I'm like, that was a really cool conversation. Like, you and I are having a great conversation today, right? And we are like, I'm
hanging up on you now. I'm hanging up on you now. That's it. I'm done.
You know, we talk about what's the shirt in the background. We can talk about all that stuff. And I'm not worried about how I look. I'm not worried about how I look on camera. I'm not worried about, I'm actually just invested in connecting with you. You know what I mean? So if and I mentor people like that. So like actors that come and connect with me and ask me like, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? Like, forget all of that. Think about what it's like to be in a conversation and be really enjoying that conversation and investing in that and trying to get your point across, or listen really intently because you're really invested in what somebody's going to tell you. That's the juice. That's when you flip it. That's when you make that transition. That's when you get into the Viola Davis zone. That's when you get into the Chadwick Boseman zone, the Meryl Streep. That's the juice right there, you know?
Well, in conversations, mostly I listen for my name, and then I'm like, oh, I'll say something. It's like how I read articles. I'm just like, is my name in this? Why am I reading this stupid thing? The conversation is amazing. Again, auditions for me are the worst, and for a lot of people are the worst. And I've heard a myriad of actors talk about how they can turn that. So now I'm going to take this thing that you say, and it's I'm going in the room and I'm having a conversation with these idiots, 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is, and they're going to be confiscated, you know, and I'm going to use that and I'll see if it sticks. I heard from a director once that he talked about it being a blind date where both parties really wanted to like each other. Like, they are looking for you. They want to give you the job. They want to go home. They want you to come in, get the job, and they just go home. And so that worked for about 3 auditions. And then you go back in your head and you're like, oh my God, I hate this, you know. So auditions are very creepy and scary. But this conversation thing is interesting because if the jobs that I got, and my first 9 auditions I was 9 and 9 and for my first 9, which is apparently not how it works. And then I never got number 10. And then I stopped counting when I missed 12. When I missed the next 12, I was like, oh, right, this is terrible. But the way I got them was you walk in the room and you're 2 minutes early. They haven't set up. They're still setting up a camera. And you just get to talk to them for a minute. And then you do the audition, which is terrible because I always audition terribly. Or the next guy is a few minutes late. And you get to talk to them for another 2 minutes. And then they're like, he did a bad job, but he seems pretty good. Like, I think he's probably the guy, and that's how I get them. But I don't know how you get that personable, open, fresh, whatever, when you're not like, I had these sides for one day and I was, and you're really concentrating on the words versus concentrating on being. I don't know how you get that.
Thing. It can be really daunting to memorize lines. It can be really daunting, and it can be, and I've had those moments in the past where I would, my acting coach, Deb Podowski, she would, scene study classes, she would give you 5 pages from a play. And every single time we would do our cold reads and I would get the scene that we wanted us to do, I'm like, there's too many words here. I'm never going to memorize these words. But once you start workshopping, once you understand what you're saying, what your intent is, and what you're listening for, it becomes a conversation. You know what I mean? So when producers and directors, and I'll tell you an interesting story. I hope I don't forget this interesting story about a role that I got. But producers and directors, I am convinced, when they say they want definitive choices that actors make, it's not that they want them to actually, Jason Momoa made this, like he did this
did the dance, he did the
right, for his role. And that was his choice, but he was grounded and authentic in that. And he meant that. And that was part of his conversation. It wasn't put on, it wasn't deliberate, it wasn't fake, he wasn't performing. That's who he was. So I had an audition for a Netflix movie called A Cinderella Story, A Christmas Story, right? And I was supposed to play this manager of this mall where the Cinderella character comes in and she's playing an elf and she meets her Prince Charming because he's the billionaire's son who is playing Santa in this mall, and he's playing Santa, so she doesn't recognize that he's her prince. You know what I'm saying? That he's the golden child, as it were. You know what I mean? So I went into this audition and I looked at the sides, and I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna play him like, one of my uncles, or like a mixture of one of my uncles, my dad, Kevin Hart, and Eddie Murphy, all mixed into one, and then I'll fuse myself into that conversation. And I'm just going to be me in that zone because I understand that zone and I can actually make that happen. And I believe that, and the words coming out of my mouth, even the ad-libs that are coming out of my mouth, are in the conversation, and that's my intention for the person that I'm talking to, which is the reader. And I really was invested in that. After I got done that, they brought me back to the audition and I did it again for the director. They renamed the character to suit the character that I had created. And so that it wasn't an older person, it was somebody that was my age or that had the energy of me. And then when I was on set, one of the most memorable things that's in my sizzle reel was completely ad-libbed from like the background dancer who was an elf was talking to one of the main leads, and I was supposed to come in and say, where is she? She's late, which is the Cinderella character. And I just came in and said, hi, Chip the Dancing Elf. You want to be Chip the Fire Elf? Get to work. And it just kind of worked that way. So my point is that when directors and producers and casting directors are looking for choices, I am convinced that it is about you completely investing in the conversation and being truthful in what you're saying, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be completely off the page word for word, because they see so many auditions in the day. They're not going to say, wait, hold on, can we do that again because you messed up this word? They're going to be locked into what you're saying. You know what I mean?
I do. I've had this conversation with the better half a few times when she's helped me with auditions, and I'm like, sweetie, they don't care if I say the words wrong. They just want me to be the person. And then I always refer back to watching the auditions of Breaking Bad, and the character, and I forgot his name, it's Aaron, I think, but he played Jesse Pinkman. And in his audition, he missed the word Breaking Bad. What?
But he was so cool. Like, he was so good in that.
Exactly.
Like, he was so good in that. Like,
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and part of the genius of that audition was not what he was saying, but how he was reacting to the reader. His reaction to the reader, like, what? You know what I mean? And that's the end of it. So a lot of actors that I've seen in scene study class when I was first starting out, or myself, if I'm going to be fully transparent about it, you wait for your lines. You know, you're sort of like, and then when it's your time to speak, and then you come to life, right? Mm-hmm. But those moments where you're listening to the reader or listening to the other actor and your reaction to what they're saying, that fuels your next line for what you're going to say, is the juice that casting directors, producers are looking for. Something
enough. You know how long it took me to get that? I had to read a Michael Caine book, and he's like, here's your line. Here's that guy's line. This is the moment where you actually want to speak, but you let him finish his thought. So your brain goes, but you don't say it because it's not your turn. But he's like, you don't think of your thought at the end of his stupid word. You think of his thought in whatever word you decide that you think you're. And it was just like, oh, right. Well, that's 12 years of bad acting. You know, like whatever.
We've all been there, right? We've all been there. Like, it's just that moment when you understand that it's about the listening. It's about you listening to what the other person is saying or your scene partner is saying or doing, and then reacting to that. And that fuels the words that are given to you. Because when I'm preparing for a self-tape or an audition, and I used to go into the room, I wouldn't have the way that I was going to say the line locked in. I would wait for what the reader was going to say. And that would fuel like what I was going to say. I didn't have it prepared like, I'm going to say the line this way, or I'm going to say the line this way. You know, it's exactly wherever they're going to, whatever they give me, the juice that they're going to give me, that's what I'm going to use. And if they give me nothing, that's what I'm going to use. You know what I'm saying?
Really? Because look, when I started out, I was like, I'm smart. So I'm going to figure out 3 ways of saying the thing. So I learned 3 ways, and you hope to God when they redirect you, maybe it was one of those ways you already practiced. But then later I'm like, I'll just do what the person, you know, what they give you. But the fact is, readers in your first audition are really just, you know, like, I love you, you're the best. And you don't, but I've always said on the day, when you're acting, you're actually on the day. I don't care how I've learned it. If I have a headache, my character has a headache. If you are now delivering your lines with a little bit of attitude, I will respond to you with a little bit of attitude. But in the room, I don't super get that. Now, hold on a second. Now, if this is about listening, you're going to have to listen to this, and I'm going to look at your face for reactions. I've got a list of questions over here that I wrote, which we're not getting to. I also look at the time. It's at 38 minutes. This show is 30 minutes long. I know. You never shut up. You never shut up. That was the thing. Get back here. There you are. Now, I wanted to show your sizzle reel. Okay. I don't know if if you're okay with it. I'd love to show it. It's about 2 minutes. Like a minute and a half. Go ahead. Producer, can we produce this sizzle reel? And as that's happening, I want to say we've had some comments from some directors and some actors talking about Michael Caine. Mr. Matt Waterworth wants to know how to run a better audition because he is a director in town at full swing, him and Scott. And so, you know what, Matt, Garfield's going to reach out to you personally, and he's going to tell you how to run a better. Gary, produce the thing.
You know what's really cool about I've had some casting directors that have amazing rooms, is they have wonderful readers and wonderful camera operators, and they just have a really chill room. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a really chill room. That's the best room that you can have. When you have a reader that actually gives actors something, that's the juice right there, because then you can find out whether or not the actor is listening or whether or not the actor can react. Because if they just come in and have a prepared way that they're going to emotionally land in that scene, and you have an amazing reader, ask them to do the scene again and see if they do it differently, if they're actually listening. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I've only been on the other end of the spectrum one time, where I was the reader for a thing I was helping produce. We saw 105 actors, and most of them great. And I read every single one of them, even though I was a producer, every single one of them. And I made the room as nice. I jumped up, I shook their hand. I knew 70 of them anyway, you know, from being around for a while. But I lost my voice every single time. We did 3 days of auditions. I had 2 cups of tea and water. And you just, and if you knew the person, they're really good, and they just faltered a little bit, you're like, go take 5 minutes when they get another guy, come back. And I kept letting them do it. You know what I mean? But you don't get that all the time. It was really just like, I'm an actor. I've had the worst rooms and some okay rooms, and we are going to make this the best damn day of your life. And that's what it was. And I don't know if I don't know if that thing is clicked for normal producers. You know what I mean? Like normal producers who just don't have.
It's such a, you know, everybody's human, and they have good days and bad days, and then you never know. One of the things that I've learned is that through 2015 to 2016, I did some really great auditions, and I didn't land hardly any gigs at all. And what I've discovered is that there's conversations happening that you're not privy to. There's variables involved with why you do get a role, why you do not get a role. It's not because, and what I tell my son and what I tell other actors is like, you know, there's so many different variables. There's a laundry list of variables of why they cast certain roles and why they do not cast you for that role. But what I try to do, and what I think that I'm always successful at, is that I never make it a question about whether or not I can play the role or whether or not I can actually act.
Wow. I walk out going, they hate my face, and now I do. And why the hell was I reading for that Sidney Poitier biopic? Gary, can I see the reel, please?
Do the reel.
And here it is.
Breaking the fourth wall here, but I got this theory. Bad guys have eyes that look like raisins. You know, small and dark, you know? I know who killed Tupac.
Easy, Blondie.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I would never lay my hands on a woman.
I got 2.
Quick, take him up with the rest.
Hey, bitch.
Hot chips for dancing now. You want to be chipping fire there? Get to work. Get to work. Thank you.
She's not giving you anything until she finds out that works.
Wearing a V-neck sweater in this neighborhood. Thank you very much.
You've been in my sights the entire time, so you must have swallowed them yourself.
You take this as a game?
You got the time?
It's 9 o'clock.
Thanks.
You're stigmatizing the entire community, giving the public permission to gay bash.
That's not true. I guess I made a better offer. And I know we don't always see eye to eye. We were both soldiers, fighting for what we believed in.
Yeah, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I ain't got the time or the inclination to find out. Take him outside. Keep it quiet.
Dr. Holly Yarrow was released from this clinic for overprescribing medications, Miss Stoller.
Real agencies like mine, the FBI, will send help.
Get a fucking muffin, man.
Should we have been warned about the swearing? Garfield, should we have been warned as an audience?
Oh my gosh. Hey, I got to tell you,
years.
There's somebody here named Jin.
Jin
Fedotov. Garfield, you rock. Question: what's the best strategy on a callback? Do you do more of the same? Do you build up upon the original audition? What I generally do for a callback is that I know for myself that they've gone from like 100 or 20 to 100 cats that are for this role down to 2 or 3. And what generally happens in a callback is that the producers and directors bring you in to feel what you've done in the tape that they looked at. So just bring what you brought before and just be more invested in the conversation. Don't try to do anything more. Don't try to overthink it. Just think about the conversation that you had, settle into that vibe, and do that. Another thing that I think directors and producers want to do is to find out if they can actually direct you. If you're locked into that role, the way that you came to at it with the audition. If they like what you did and they want you to kind of twist it a little bit or just nudge it or just take you in a different direction, can you do that in the callback? So just be open to the available for the opportunity. That's the best advice I can give for a callback.
Sweet. I think the more calm you are, the more in charge of your faculties you are. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's about it, man. So if you can be relaxed, you will be in charge of every little thing that you've ever learned, that you could ever do, that whatever. It's a very tough thing to say, but
I'll give you another little thing that I did. When I would go into auditions back before the pandemic, is that I would always get nervous in the room. Do you know what I mean? People would be on the couch, or there'd be casting directors and producers.
Say casting couch. Say casting couch. Say casting couch.
Casting couch.
Thank you.
And I would get overwhelmed, and I would get, I'd be in the room and I would think that it's not my room, right? So I would do specific things, 2 specific things that would make it my room. And they always said yes. If there was an X on the floor, which is my mark, I would say, can I walk into this mark? Can I sit down on this line? Can I do whatever? I would do certain things that would be specific that I wanted to do in the scene. They say, yeah, sure, for whatever. And as soon as they said yes, it's my room.
Very nice.
You know what I'm saying? It's not me trying to be something in their room. As soon as they would say, I would say, can I walk into this? Can I step in this line, or can I sit down during this line, or do I have room to move around? Do I have to stay in one place and go, no, we'll follow you. As soon as they say yes, it's my room.
Interesting. That works for you. I usually just go in and grovel, and then I'm like, I know secrets about at least 3 of you. And it works half the time. It works 40% of the time. So do the math on that, kids. Now, did I... oh goodness. Anyway, that reel was not bad. I say work another 5 years and get some better stuff. Oh, that's what I was going to.
I got more stuff coming out.
I know you do. Stuff you can talk about, stuff you can't talk about. I wanted to ask. Oh man, on one of your longer, not a sizzle reel, on one of the reels, I saw you did something, and I think it was called The Edge. I could totally be wrong. It could have been The Voice. I'm bad at English, but I'll tell you who was in it. Ray Winston was in it, who to me, Ray Winston, the British actor from Sexy Beast.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Somewhere between Bob Hoskins and Brian Blessed I just think he's a lion. And I kind of wanted to ask you this question about, have you ever been starstruck in any of your, you go to work and you're like, oh, or in the table read, you're like, come on, I can't say this about.
I think the only time that I've been starstruck was before I became, like I used to work for a special skills agency that, if they needed soldiers or police officers that could, handle rifles and know how to clear a room properly, I was part of this agency called DC5. And when they didn't have roles for us where we had to use our special skills, they brought us in as background actors. Okay. And I did this one show called, I can't remember what it was called, but Matthew McConaughey and Al Pacino were starring in this film. And
2 for the money? 2 for the money?
Yes, thank you very much. And I was one of the executives in the office of this firm that Al Pacino was the head guy of. And when he walked in the room and he sat down with us and, brought us all in and was very, very cool in his Al Pacino way, I was just like,
yeah,
it's Al Pacino. It was just, and that's the only time I think that I really was generally starstruck, because what I've learned over the years is that everybody that I've met that's an A-list star or just coming up or that has done a lot of things that I really admire is that they're real people, you know what I mean? And that their process is always the same. My son did a Netflix feature where he played Viola Davis's son and Vincent D'Onofrio's son. And Sandra Bullock was leading this, and she was also executive producer. And so being in that environment with Viola Davis and Vincent D'Onofrio and watching them workshop a scene together is exactly the same as being in scene study class with my acting coach Deb Prodowski and all the other actors that I truly admire that were my classmates, workshop a scene, making sure that you're taking care of your scene partner, that you're safe, or that this works for them, and that can you do this? Would it be okay if I did this? When I say this line, I'm going to be over here instead of over here, just so you know, and just so the camera knows. Just all those different things, and just watching that process, or just watching them do the scene over and over again, and really try to land themselves in it, and seeing that organically build, like watching Sandra Bullock do an emotional scene with my son in there doing his lines, and then Viola's telling him and the kid that's playing his brother to go in the house, and then them two going toe to toe in this emotional scene, and watching them do take after take after take. Brilliant. Like they're where they are for a reason, but the process from which they generate their craft is the same.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I got. Sweet. You made me lose my words. Look,
just don't look into my eyes, bro.
You know what? You're a little further up now from the camera. Our producers made it so we're both sharing the screen, which will never happen in real life, kids. Just saying. I burned bridges. Okay, thank you.
There's
now make us touch cheeks.
On you, right?
How does that work? Anyway, I like how you didn't reach in. When I in a very human way, I went to touch a cheek. You see that?
Oh yeah.
And you were like, no, it's too late now. It's too late now. You missed your chance. No. Look, we've gone so over time. I didn't even get to talk about cosplay. Oh man, you got these things. Look, I can't pronounce the next thing you're working on with Cecily Strong. Say it again.
Schmigadoon, which is the name of the town. Yeah,
Schmigadoon.
Schmigadoon. It's a musical comedy starring
Cecily Strong,
Keegan-Michael Key, Cecily Strong, Alan Cummings, Kristin. Yeah, unbelievable. Dove Cameron, Lorne Michaels, executive producer that. Cinco Paul, who wrote and produced Despicable Me, is heading this thing as well. Directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. Whoa. This is going to be unlike you've ever seen it. It comes out July 16th.
July 16th. Okay, yeah. Sweet. And yeah, okay, sweet.
I play one of the, and it's a story of this couple that goes on a retreat, gets lost, and ends up in this town called Schmigadoon. And this town is locked into the 1940s musicals like Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, and all those colorful, like Mary Poppins, Sound of Music, Oklahoma, all wrapped into one. And all these characters are just kind of like time trapped in this time zone. And they come in and they're changed by the town. They change the town. I play one of the colorful characters in that town. It was one of the highlights of my career just to be a part of it, So yeah, I can't wait for it to come out.
Oh man, sounds amazing. I'm going to watch it and then I'm going to tell people, hey, I know that man. And they'll be like, shut up. I hope it's in like that Technicolor, I hope it has that look as well.
Dude, you will be thoroughly impressed. The singing, the costumes, the dancing, the writing, the story. And just being a part of that cast and just watching them do their thing. Like I've been a fan of Cecily Strong and Michael Keegan-Key. Like Key and Peele, forget about it. You know what I mean? Alan Cummings, I've watched him in so many different shows and just been so impressed. Got to chat with Dove Cameron, who is a wonderful, wonderful lady. Kristin Chenoweth, who's just like an icon on the Broadway stage. I mean, forget about it. I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Watch it. Apple TV, July 16th. It's going to be crazy.
I'll stream it illegally the day after. Thank you so much. Now listen, Garfield, we can continue talking, but it's not for the world of talent talk. We gotta wrap this sucker up. I'd love to talk to you for another 5 to 7 minutes before you're like, it's enough. So I think we have to just say thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for coming out while staying at home, logging on, however you've done this. And it's been great. And I think it's been very valuable to our younger and maybe newer actors and all of that stuff. I should have really written an outro.
Well, I want to thank all the people like Jin and Matt and those people that came out and asked me questions. Thank you for all the positive feedback. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very, very sweet. Okay, so just stick around. We're going to jump off the live thing. Guys, thank you again, and thank you for Gary for trusting me with whatever the hell this was. And that's it.
All right.
All right.